Hey there, welcome to the Intentional Academy podcast, where we believe that life is best when it is lived on purpose. If you want help finding time for what matters most, launching your dream career, and building a prosperous future, then you should visit us at intentionalacademy.com. I'm your host, Tony Farrar, joined by our co-host, Justin Thomas, and we are thrilled that you are tuning in. Hey there, Justin.
Hey, Tony, how's it going?
Dude, I'm doing great. Before we get started, this episode airs on Justin's birthday, so happy birthday, Justin.
Thanks, Tony. It's one of those bittersweet ones, 35th birthday. I didn't think I'd be spending it social distancing, but I'm going to make the most of it.
Well, I'll eat a piece of cake from a distance with you, buddy.
I think we're having key lime cheesecake.
I will definitely eat some of that at a distance with you. Today we are answering a question from one of our listeners about what is the best way to study for a final exam. But before we get to that, this episode is sponsored by our free guide, the Ultimate Career Builders Starter Kit. I see so many talented students whose job applications are being ignored, leaving them feeling so desperate that they'll settle for any job that makes an offer. So we created a system that helps you build your image, connect with potential employers, and land a job you love. Maybe you can take advantage of the fact that everyone is at home for the corona quarantine. They're more open to connecting online than they ever were before. Head over to the show notes for today's episode at intentionalacademy.com/5 to claim your free copy today. intentionalacademy.com/5.
Okay, Tony, what is the best way to study for a final exam?
I think people struggle with making grades a goal rather than learning. And
doesn't the competitive job market use grades to filter all of their applications?
I get that, because there's such a pressure. It is written down and recorded and used to judge you. The problem is that they're supposed to be measuring what it is that you learned, and they're supposed to be giving you feedback.
I know I struggled to the point where a lot of times I found myself not studying because I didn't feel like I gained the benefit of the time I spent.
You put all this time staring at your notes and you either just feel more lost than you were when you started, or
Exactly. If I couldn't sit down and just if I sat down for a specific task and I already understood the material, I felt like I'd be wasting my time and I might jumble myself up. On the other side, if I sat down and I didn't understand the material, it had a negative effect to where there's no way I'm going to learn this material in the little time I have.
I think a big part of that is that it's actually really hard to know if you're ready. There's got to be more to studying than just going over your notes. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I would say the solution is that it's not about our grades, but what you're getting out of the material you're learning, the value added, the skills you're learning. Focus on truly learning the material, understanding the material that is being put in front of you, and let that be the motivation instead of a numerical grade. It's hard to change your mindset that the goal is not your grades.
I love your point there about focusing on learning the material with a reason behind it. The reason that you're studying this stuff isn't to get numbers on a transcript. It's to learn value-added skills that are actually going to serve you in your career. And so I thought it might be helpful to just help people understand, what does it actually mean to know something?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put that, Tony. I recall a lot of times trying to basically learn to the example given in class or learn to the homework problem and not necessarily understanding how to apply what I'm learning.
Turns out there's a scientific system for this. It's called Bloom's Taxonomy of Learning. There's a really cool graphic. I'll put it in the show notes. You can access that at intentionalacademy.com/5. And what it is it's 6 levels of mastering a topic. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. Every one of those requires a deeper level of mastery on a topic. So, for example, if you're just trying to go at the bottomest level, right, that might be it, that's the remember level. That would be things like, can you define these words? Can you remember that there are, the names of the 50 states? That would be a remembering type action. On the other hand, understanding takes things a step farther. So when you understand things, maybe now you can classify them or identify them. So you see three things and you can identify which one is the thing. So one of the best ways that you can study is actually to sit down and write these objectives for yourself. Use all 6 levels of it as a guide to defining what it means to know the subjects that you're about to be examined on. By the way, as you do that, it also points out where you're most stuck, because that's where you're going to have trouble organizing and voicing these. And I just want to recommend there's a couple of ways you can get started here. First off, use the syllabus. Your faculty probably uses the words learning objectives and then just lists a bunch of topics. Those aren't learning objectives, but they are the right topics to set the objectives about. After that, you can head to every chapter in your textbook. They usually have learning objectives. Again, they're not necessarily written using this language, but they are objectives that you can start with and use as a baseline. And then lastly, if you head to the internet, you can actually find the syllabus for the class you're taking. Maybe some other professor did write it down. Focus on that list. Every one of your learning objectives is the end of a sentence that starts with, can I? Can I define the following terms? And if the answer isn't yes, then clearly you need to study that more.
So, Tony, in my background as a system engineer, we have something similar to what you're talking about, and it's something called objectives and thresholds. You set a threshold of minimal acceptable. So this is the minimum acceptable output for said requirement. And then you can have an objective. And what the objective states is, this is the maximum value added that we want you to potentially put into the system. What that means is that we don't want you to, we call it gold plating. So we don't want you to make more than we need. So how does that apply to studying? You set a threshold of, this is the minimum amount of time and the minimum amount of effort I need to put into learning this material to understand it properly, to pass. And then you set an objective. This is the maximum amount of time that I'm willing to sit down and focus and ensure I learn this material before I'm losing value added by repeating over and over again notes or doing more problems and potentially getting a negative effect.
Wow, that's really interesting, man. Yeah, I tell students all the time, like, the ideal grade is a 94, not 100, because if you got 100, you don't know if you actually did 150% of the work. A 94 lets you know you got a 94.
Exactly.
By the way, don't put too much pressure on yourself here. Not every topic in every class goes to level 6. Okay. In fact, in my classes, I don't do exams beyond level 3. Level 6, the top level, create, that's a great thing to do on, say, a semester project. Doesn't work so good on a final exam for me to ask my students to create stuff. Anyhow, this is a cool project, and it'll help you get your head around what it is you're trying to learn. I used to really feel like goal setting was a waste of time, because what I need to be doing right now is studying, not flipping aimlessly through my notes, and certainly not sitting around writing goals. I need to be understanding this material. And I think the problem is, when I was approaching things that way as a student, I had no ability to tell the difference between some nuanced piece of trivia that I wrote in the margin during class lecture and an actual important detail that might show up on the exam. I think the best part of defining what it means to know something is that it gives you permission to stop studying. So, what's the best way to study? To create clear learning objectives using Bloom's taxonomy to clarify what it means to understand a topic at every level.
Yeah, Tony, I feel like there is a real importance of setting clear requirements up front of what you need to learn and how much time you have to learn it.
Absolutely. Tune in next week where we'll talk about how much time you should spend studying for each class and how to get the best overall result during finals. In the meanwhile, don't forget the real objective, learning value-added skills to make you a rock star when you start your career. But learning those skills is only half of what you need to do. You need to showcase those skills to land the job, and we love to help people do that. Grades are not everything. You are more than a number. You have a unique story to tell. a story that shows how much value you bring to the table. Let us show you in our free guide, the Ultimate Career Builders Starter Kit. This PDF download will get you started with the Intentional Academy's system for building your image, connecting with potential employers, and landing a job you love. It starts with downloading the guide at intentionalacademy.com/5 and using it to make 3 key decisions to get moving. intentionalacademy.com/5, as in the number of this episode. intentionalacademy.com/5.
This show is here to support you. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer, head over to intentionalacademy.com/podcast to send us a message. That's intentionalacademy.com/podcast. If you found value in this episode, leave us a review. Use whatever podcast app that you're using to listen to us and just drop us a review there. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. We share bonus episodes with our subscribers that you won't hear about any other way. Lastly, please share this episode with someone you feel could use this information. We'd really appreciate it.
All right, that's all for now. Have a great week.
Yep. Thanks, Tony.
See
Bye.
you, Justin.